Good morning, everybody. This is Stephen Pugh of the Home Bible College. It is March the 10th, and in today's Bible reading in Deuteronomy chapter 19, the Lord clarifies three areas, all of which have to do with innocent people. First, he speaks about the importance of the cities of refuge for those who have caused death or injury quite innocently. Second, he speaks about the importance of proper witnesses to protect the innocent from being convicted of hearsay evidence. And lastly, the rules of war are specified to protect the innocent as well. First of all, however, we see that the Lord designated cities of refuge scattered throughout the whole land so as to protect the innocent from vengeance from families and friends of injured parties. And the Lord gives the example of a wood chopper who is working away and the head comes off his axe and accidentally kills her workmate. Now there's no malice in his heart, it's just an accident. He can escape to a city of refuge and get a judicial review of his case. The Lord is very concerned that assassinations of those whose hearts are innocent must not be allowed to happen in his case. The Lord is very concerned that, the Lord is very concerned that assassinations of those whose hearts are innocent must not be allowed to happen. The Lord sets the principle that murder is only murder when there is malice or hatred in the heart. However, this facility is not to be taken advantage of by murderers. That's very important. The Lord also adds that the removal of a landmark is a very serious offence in Israel. It is effectively theft of land. Then the Lord specifies the rules regulating the use of witnesses in hearings. If witnesses appear in front of judges and they, after close examination, are found to be false witnesses, then the witnesses are to suffer the punishment that their testimony would have brought on the defendant. Now in this way, men are restrained from making false testimony. Now we see this when Christ was tried. The witnesses could not agree, and yet they did not suffer crucifixion. This shows what a travesty of justice the trials of Christ were. The judges were not to show unjustified pity, but to judge fairly, not excessively or leniently. In the next passage, the Lord specifies the rules of war. The first principle is that the war is the Lord's war. He will go ahead and he will fight for you, and therefore Israel is not to be afraid in battle. There were a number of cases in which eligible men were excused from going to battle. For example, a man who had just built a house or was still building his house, a man who was just planting a vineyard and had not had the benefit of tasting the grapes yet, a man who was betrothed and had not married his wife yet, and a man who was afraid in the face of the enemy. Now these were all men that could be excused battle. The point about being afraid is that his fear might spread amongst the other men in battle, and so therefore he was not to go into battle. The next issue is how the army is to be formed. The appointment of captains is essential to lead the people. And next comes the actual protocol of battle. First, there is to be an offer of peace terms. The offer is that if the people surrender, then they will promise to give tribute. They may serve Israel forever. However, if this is not accepted, then hostilities are entered into. We see this in the case of David and Goliath, who offered peace terms to Israel before fighting commenced. In the battle, every enemy soldier is to be killed, but women and children are to be spared. The goods and the stock of the enemy are allowed for spoil. However, the cities of the land in which Israel was going in to claim were to be totally destroyed. Man and beast and nothing was to survive. The 6 nations, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites were to be totally destroyed. Israel was the sword of the Lord, bringing the judgment of God on these 6 nations. Their sins were to be obliterated from off the face of the earth. Any trees that are good for food are not to be cut down during a siege, because they are food for the army. Of course, in a siege, people do need to have wood, but they weren't allowed to cut down a tree that provided food. Now, I just want to scan back through the passage and have a look at a few things, and I will comment if I may. It's very interesting in that first passage where it says in verse 4, "Whoever killeth his neighbour ignorantly, whom he hateth not in time past," like when a man goeth unto the wood with his neighbour to hew wood, and his hand fetcheth a stroke with the axe to cut down the tree, and the head slippeth from the heave, so the head of the axe comes off the handle, and lighteth upon his neighbour, and he die, he may flee unto one of the cities and live, lest the avenger of blood pursue the slayer while his heart is hot, and overtake him, because the way is long, and slay him, whereas he was not worthy of death, inasmuch as he hated him not in time past. And so we have a very important principle here, that murder was not just the act of killing, it was the act of killing with hatred, with premeditated hatred in your heart. Very, very important point there. Take a look at the next little passage. In verse 10 it says that innocent blood be not shed in the land. So these cities were set up in such a way that innocent blood should not be shed in the land, which the Lord thy God excuse me, which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance, and so blood be upon thee. But if any man hate his neighbour, and lie in wait for him, and rise up against him, and smite him mortally that he die, and fleeth into one of these cities, then the elders of the city shall send and fetch him thence, and deliver him unto the hand of the avenger of blood, that he might die, and thine eye shall not pity him, but thou shalt put away the guilt of innocent blood from Israel, that it may go well with thee. So these cities of refuge were not a refuge for murderers, they were a refuge for the innocent. Very important point there, very, very important point. Now you'll notice also in verse 15 it says, "One witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity, or for any sin, in any sin that he sinneth. At the mouth of 2 witnesses, or at the mouth of 3 witnesses, shall the matter be established." However, verse 18, "Behold, if the witness be a false witness, and hath testified falsely against his brother, then shall ye do unto him as he had thought to have done unto his brother. So shall you put away evil from among you." So this is the case of a person who is innocent because he's had a testimony, a false testimony, put against him. Now what the law said was that the person that brought a false testimony should suffer the very same punishment that he's accusing the innocent man of. That's very interesting. Verse 21, "Thine eye shall not pity, but life shall go for life, and eye for eye, and tooth for tooth," and so on. That's just an absolutely amazing thing. There was no country in all the world that had rules and had a way of thinking that was as amazing as this. So there we are. I don't want to go through every part of every passage. I just thought I'd share those with you. That's a very interesting passage today. It's all really about those that are genuinely innocent. They shouldn't suffer for their innocence. Well, God bless you. It's great to speak to you, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye for now.